our next episode of Future Focused CXOs, the first episode in 2025. I'm very excited to get Jordan MacKinnon on the call. He is a VP and CFO for Cisco, based in Canada, Ontario. Without further delay, let me welcome Jordan to our podcast. Would request you to give a deeper and a wider introduction about yourself.
The best thing to know about me is I'm a very strategic, but also operationally driven CFO. I've got 18 years of finance experience now. It makes me feel really old to say that out loud, but it is true. Probably what's interesting about me is I've worked in a number of different industries in progressive positions. So I've moved in and out of transportation roles, retail roles, but also financial services, which I think we're going to talk a little bit more about today, which is great. These changes in roles that I made is all informed by a little bit of my background, which I started in music, and how I actually came from more of a creative mindset, but also an entrepreneurial mindset of being a musician, having a band, and then how does that kind of then translate to, okay, now I want to start my finance career and accounting career, which certainly starts very regimented. There's a lot of similarities between the two. Pivoting back to business, things I love to do the most are really help drive financial performance for my business. Just jump in, get to know the business, roll up my sleeves, help them untangle the Christmas lights and unlock value in the organization. I'm really passionate about leading teams, training leaders of leaders, getting myself out of the weeds a little bit, but rising the level and letting my team rise with me and grow and engage with business problems in real time. Honestly, it's just about being the best version of myself that I can be every day and letting people know what that is and building that trust.
I'm thrilled to ask you about your music career, but I do want to focus more on what you brought from it. You mentioned something about your creativity and your approach to finance. How did you create the leverage using that creative side to your current role or any of your finance roles to lead more effectively?
Great question, very multifaceted. As you think about musical finance, they both kind of start in a very, maybe I'm backing up this question a little bit, but in a very regimented fashion. You start with your piano lessons, you start with your debits and credits. Very soon, once you get the basics, you're bridging off into a more performative state, more creative place, a place where you're connecting with your audience. You're creating a different version for yourself, and it becomes more of an emotional relationship building place versus just unraveling debits and credits or music charts. For me, it's always been about knowing the fundamentals, but also using that to help connect to the audience. That's what I did back in music. That's what I've learned to do, and maybe even had a leg up doing coming into the finance world where people may have been even more technically savvy than I am, but I was perhaps a bit more comfortable in a presentation because I understood, okay, this is just another crowd. This is not 1,000 people or 500 people. This is 6 people. You learn to make your set list and speak your bullet points and help the audience enjoy the experience and take something from it as well. That probably helped me a little bit. Now it's very interesting. From a leadership role perspective, I'm still rolling up my sleeves and I'm in the spreadsheets and we never quite get away from that. And I don't necessarily want to because I enjoy that to a certain degree. Making presentations for me is a big thing. When I think about, okay, we're looking at an acquisition or I have some very senior executives coming from the US next week, what can I put together to show them what our business has been doing? Yeah, you start with all the standard templates and forecasts and things like that, but I always like to try and challenge myself. Okay, how do I make this a bit more interesting? How do I help them connect? If they're an operations type person or a sales type person or someone not from finance, connect to what we're doing. I always find that actually helps invigorate me to do more and go above and beyond because it's not just, okay, let's get these templates done. It's how can I kind of create the best art possible for this and bridge that gap. It starts rudimentary. You can take it to an art though, and most arts do, but that's always been my drive and my passion.
So no mosh pits in the boardroom then, right?
There's no mosh pits in the boardroom. I'm getting to an age where there's more people in the boardroom who've been in a mosh pit. When I first started the boardroom, people didn't know what a mosh pit was. Now, I'm getting into a mosh pit age of maybe not currently.
Yeah. You also mentioned last time that you had a difficult time in your career. During that time, you went through your CFA certification. Talk more about what was that difficult time. I think all of us have faced it. How did you really overcome that? Did this certification help you?
It's a great question. As I think about my educational background, I did my standard degrees, and then I got into a sort of a CPA, MBA combined program. And that's where I just kind of got my foundations for one, which I love because that gave me the foundation for obviously the accounting. I also got the MBA piece, which is a bit more strategic, a bit more broader. From there, I saw some career growth right after that happened. I felt like I leveled off a little bit. Fast forward in the story, I moved to Toronto from a smaller part of Canada. Toronto, famously, at least for Canada, is a large financial services industry. There's large banking opportunity there. I started to wonder, while I'm going through this challenging time, does it make sense for me to pursue a CFA, which is a whole other wonderful designation that would be a bit more tailored to the banking sector? And I remember thinking, do I use this time to pursue that or not? It's interesting, I didn't actually pursue it, although it is a wonderful designation. it left the imprint in my heart. The more important question became like, why do I want to do this? What was it about that? It was to help me access that market. I started thinking a bit differently. Is there other ways to access that industry without a CFA? And well, yeah, of course there is. Maybe a bit not as straight, but it was almost like uncovering the why for me was actually help what get me into the financial services industry. My first position really more a CFO type role from what my background was. But within my time there, I actually was able to migrate to more of a capital markets CFA. I went into a group where I was literally the only one without a CFA, and my incumbent had a CFA, and I'm sure the next 6 people had a CFA. I was almost in a position where I had to learn on the spot with what I should have learned in a CFA. It was really great, but I was also able to bring a lot to that group from a creative side and a modeling side, or sort of a business sort of relationship side, to add to what they were very strong in, which was financial modeling. It helped me elevate my financial modeling, certainly. I was also able to bring a little more on how to connect with some of these business leaders and how they think and how they acquire companies and how they move in different markets, because they're not always necessarily thinking in a financial model centric way. So you kind of have to, and they're looking at new opportunities and things you don't know about and that are not in your models. I was like, how do you bridge that very advanced financial modeling, but also really understanding kind of what the business is thinking and doing, the people aspect of it.
That's really interesting. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I will tell you, I also went through very difficult times in my business. Okay, it was around 5 years back or 6 years back when first time I also met Steve. Coming from a technical background, I always knew my domain, right? Salesforce. I actually did the same thing that time. I went little crazy. I did 5 certifications in 6 weeks about Salesforce.
Wow.
Because there was no customer, no business, right? I didn't know where to get started. I had built some crazy framework and I had 48 slides to explain that. I'm really struggling. But I'll tell you, my experience of doing certification relates to you. First, even though I knew the domain very well, it told me a lot of best practices that in our case, Salesforce has implemented in their product, which helped me a lot when I talk to the customers. Now I know when the customer says, oh, we would like to have industry best practices. It is a very jargon word. What does that even mean? Now, at least I can relate to you saying that I don't know if this is industry standard or not, but this is how Salesforce has built it. Right? This is how the sales process works. This is how the whole thing works, right? Second thing, it opened up a lot of opportunities for me. Look, even though technically I knew what I knew, people looked at me as, oh my God, this guy has a lot of certifications. He's an expert. I went on a call and I started getting business. It was a crazy experience, but I think a good point, if you're struggling, best thing is to upscale yourself, right? It also keeps you busy. You focus less on problems, right? More on doing something, but it definitely brings you up.
Absolutely. For me, focusing on a few controllable goals has always been more engaging than focusing on 30 different things that are out of my control and partly out of my control. Is focusing on what's within my control, my influence, and knocking those out. And even seeing a little bit of progress sometimes really motivates you to keep going, even if it's just a tiny bit.
My dad tried to become a CFA while raising 3 kids. It was not an easy thing. He did not get through the second test. Totally understand. I'm like, if I was raising 3 kids, I wouldn't be taking that exam. The fact that you were able to hold your own in a room with others who had worked through CFA, does a lot of financial modeling. I imagine what made it most effective is what you talked about, the skill that you have of your ability to read the room and know how to present to the right people, put on the right show for the right people, that kind of thing.
That's right.
How do you think leaders can integrate emotional intelligence into the financial decision making? So you have all this data, but now you've got all this emotion on the other side from all these other people, all these other executives who aren't looking at that same kind of data. How do you help them cross that bridge, which is what it seems like you were specializing in?
Yeah, for sure. The big piece for me is in emotional intelligence, is just empathy. If you think about others and the impact it may have on them and how they're thinking and feeling, right? You can make it a bit of an analytical exercise for an analytical person to understand that. I talked like this is just another aspect to the model. Ultimately, there's a person connected to a decision. Like no matter what financial model, there's a person that's going to have their hand on their button and they may respond exactly how you want to this model and they may not at all. What's best to know is just understand the most you can for that person. You're never going to know everything. A little bit about how they're thinking, listening skills are huge there, right? So it's coming in alongside them, understanding how they're viewing the business, bringing them into your model a little bit if you can. Maybe not all 600 tabs or whatever, just the front sheet. Here's how we're looking at it. Does this make sense? And here's how you're looking at it. And here's how sometimes you can adjust things a little bit. Sometimes just connecting the two worlds a little bit is great. The empathy part is then you think about, okay, they immediately then jump to this leader. What do they need and what are they going to think about this versus just like, here's the model, here's the deadline, here's the template, and I send it off. Sometimes finance people, we all get stuck in that regiment. That's important too, but it's really that after that, it's still just a human being that are attached to this that have to be comfortable. You have to relationship manage, you have to build trust with, and you have to do all these kind of intangibles, which aren't necessarily going to fit in your model. But it's so important that you learn these things. You can do so much more with your career if you're able to build these skills, which unfortunately sometimes aren't always intuitive, right? They're not always things you're taught in school. We see them more and more on development plans and things like that, soft skills. It's something probably we're still perfecting, I think, as an organization and as a society, and trying to teach that kind of EI aspect.
I think like you could have a cost optimization plan built by a CFA, but you hand it to somebody. I'm not cutting my staff by 20% because their lives at play here, right? The real best plan based on how we treat each other doesn't have to always look like the optimal financial performance. It might be somewhere in the middle or some other balance. Knowing this person, there's no way that guy's going to buy that. There's no way he's going to accept this. Even though it may be the best financially on a number, it's not something that's acceptable in the boardroom.
What may come out of that discussions, I find, if you even really dig in, they may say, listen, maybe I can do 5%, but I could take these other 15% and create this whole other initiative, which you didn't know about, a new product, a new capability. That's not in your model. You wouldn't have known. You don't know about it because you don't necessarily know where the market's going and changing. Sometimes you can even go back and forth a little bit. It's okay, what is the best way to optimize this business? That's where I find a North Star, a common North Star helps. We all want to grow this business, make it more profitable, grow it, or at the very least, we were hired to do so. We can all start with what we agree on. We're all trying to do the best thing for this business and collaborate. Let's have a discussion. Here's what we've come up with in our model. If we do this, we can gain these advantages. We're just saying, this is what it would mean, but talk to us. How can we better layer this? You find operations people or sales leaders, they get more engaged. They start thinking about things and throwing them your way. And then see the numbers go up in green. Oh, I didn't realize that would do that much. All of a sudden you have this like collaborative plan, which people always ask, collaborate and get together. But you actually have a more of a natural thing. That's where it's interesting with music. You can have just like 4 professional musicians stand beside each other, but there is something about a band that kind of sits together and just like they're connected, they're jive. They're either good friends or sometimes they're complete enemies. But it makes the music a bit more meaningful and a bit more intense. It's not just people performing a sequence beside each other. There's something a little bit more at work there. That's how I probably have even connected one to the other. This is a band and we're creating music together. Yes, here's what I think we should play, but what do you think? Let's give you your solo and my solo and on we go. Sometimes that's what creates maybe the brightest picture, I think.
I do remember Steve. I don't remember the name, but I do remember we were talking to someone and he was also a musician. When we asked him a leadership question, which is my next question to you, he gave a very interesting answer. He said, when the band meets, what do they do? First thing, they tune their instruments and then they exchange the notes to make sure that we are on the same page. He says leadership and looking at your team is exactly like looking at your band. If you want to have a good performance, have a good quarter, you all need to be playing in tune. If one person is out of tune, you have to bring him back. Otherwise, the whole band performance goes down.
Yeah, sometimes on the same time and the same click a little bit too. You can even be sometimes playing the same music, but it's not in sync with each other. It sounds off because it's like
that VP of sales has always got a higher rhythm than somebody else.
That's right. They're all doing the same thing, but it's not clicking. Yeah. You can tell sometimes the best bands that perform that you love, or may not even be the best technical musicians. They're the best at connecting, writing music and performing and connecting together.
You took leadership position during pandemic. Very difficult times. I have twofold question because we are again in a difficult time. Not politically, yes, we are, but more from an AI perspective. my question is, when you took a leadership position during pandemic, what were some of your biggest challenges? How did you adapt to the approach and so much of change that was thrown to us?
Great question. For me, it was coming into the position I wanted for a while. Like, I want to be a CFO, I want to be a leader and leader of leaders, and you want to do all the things that you hear about. Also, it's going to be a new industry, relatively. It's going to be an industry that's widely impacted by this pandemic that you're coming into. So it was like someone giving you your dream car, your sports car in a snowstorm on a road you're not familiar with. Here's your Porsche, but like it's massively dangerous. So you're like living your dream very nervously. I had to rely a little bit on my past training too. And this was probably the first time where I was in such a leadership position where there's not just a sort of a regiment where you can, okay, this is your role. You can adjust and adopt and stretch and be creative in this. This is, okay, it's wide open. Here's these companies that are struggling. Here's this team. They may or not have the right structure, may not have the right people on it. By the way, the business is, we're very uncertain how we can continue. It was really all about starting with my own structure. Okay, here's a structure that's worked for me in the past. It's like, start with what I know. Maybe we could rejig the structure. Maybe we could help the companies find a little way of doing things and optimize things in that way. Once I had a structure to give myself a bit of a North Star and a game plan, it was really collaborating, like talking to some of the key people, like, here's what I think. What do you think? They may say that's a great idea. That's perfect structure. Or they may come along and say, you know what, actually, I don't think that this may work. This is not going to work because of something you don't know. So it's really bringing people in to say, okay, this is not just my vision. This is like our vision. How do we do that? It was really taking off 1% wins at a time. I had to be comfortable with that, because if I tried to fix everything all at once, I was going to burn myself out and nothing was going to get fixed. Is you want to be a perfectionist or do that all at once and be a star. It was tricky because it didn't feel like that was immediately possible. I actually want to help the business fix underlying things versus just come and be a glossy leader that spins things and makes it sound really good, but nothing's actually getting fixed. And then on they go and the business is no better off. I really wanted to get under the hood and fix things. So I had to create these broader plans. I had to put my project manager hat on a lot of times and help people tick through the steps. If we just fix this, then people started seeing the progress, and wow, that is getting better week over week and month over month. Margins are improving, sales are improving, costs are improving. We're having better conversations and we're in less silos. That then turns over, and then you build credibility and teamwork with each other. And then you can make some of the tougher decisions. Like, do we actually need this building? Do we need this site? Do we need this team? Could we think about things a little differently? Could we redeploy them? Until you get some of that teamwork and connection, collaboration, and even some momentum and positivity going, it's hard to get the credibility to make those bigger decisions. You go from there and you build from there. All of a sudden, the large organization sees all these positive changes and they give you more credibility for business cases. We need $100 million for this project, which before would be like, forget about it. But now it's, oh, I've seen what you can do with very little. What can we give you with more? Maybe an acquisition makes sense. You just keep building that credibility and you make it a story for everybody, not just your vision. It's like, how do we engage everybody in this? And that was, for me, key to turning around maybe some low engagement scores. Or people do the sort of surveys. No, I'm not paid enough. Yes, I'm work too much. As you try and turn things around, sometimes you can get people to work just as hard, but if you're engaging them on key business problems and they see the progress, they see that they're stretching themselves, they'll feel more.
Absolutely.
I threw a lot at you there.
I just want to ask you a connected question. How would you now, right? And when I say difficult times, I was really talking about the whole commotion that is going on around. Last year, we saw Gen AI. This year, we are seeing all agents and agentic AI. Suddenly, there is a nuclear bomb dropped on us of DeepSeek, saying, oh, it doesn't need to be that expensive. Here is open source. Take it. Do something with it. We are in the middle of it. We talk to a lot of CXOs and everybody's worried, what is my strategy? The question really to you is, as a leader, how would you navigate this space? You have a very good experience of doing it during pandemic. What synergies would you draw? How would you go through this change? We are going through a massive change, just like pandemic.
Honestly, absolutely. Like, that's come right up on the back of the pandemic, where people were overworked and stretched. And all of a sudden, this new technology is coming into play and really changing the game. There was a lot of anxiety. Like, what is the future? Very few people in the world right now know exactly how AI is going to be deployed and work, and they're probably already billionaires. From how much we use it in our modeling, as I go to CFO conferences, 2-3 years ago, it was all about how to be a charismatic leader. Now, I haven't heard for 5 years how to be a charismatic leader and authentic leader, which is great, by the way. I love that. The past 2 years, AI is everything. The speakers coming in are AI. It's huge. I think people need to certainly learn the tool and the skill and how it can make them more productive. This can be a very powerful tool. To a lot to my team. This is coming. There's no question, and it's already here in a lot of companies. There's no question there's going to be AI capabilities mixed in with Excel, mixed in with our ERP. They're going to be able to do the things that we used to have to do ourselves. Go dig into the ERP and pull data out and slice and dice it. There's going to be a computer that's going to do that in a second. How do you then use that to your advantage versus just be like, oh, the computer's going to almost certainly going to be able to do it better than you to a certain extent. What can you offer that an AI is never going to be able to? You can offer yourself. You can offer the relationship building. Let AI do what it's meant to do. I'll acknowledge I know 2% probably of what AI can do, but obviously I know ChatGPT. I know some of the models Excel's kind of working on and Microsoft's working on. I can think ahead as to where this is going to go. You're going to be able to have a little helper that's going to be able to pull things together for you very fast. It's all going to be about now the decision, helping the business get to a better decision faster. One, because you can now with the free time, and two, because other companies are going to have that. We're now going to be in a new situation where every company is going to be more and more using AI to their advantage and advancing their decision making. I would say teach everybody, get a hold of it and understand it. I find a lot of companies don't necessarily have an AI strategy, or it's not clear. It's a room. Yeah. Well, we hired a director of AI. Cool. Never met them. Don't know what they're doing. Hey, we hired Jim, and so I'm like, okay, when do I talk to Jim? I don't know if it's there yet, but I think it's going to come fast. I think it's going to come through the technology space too. But
I'll tell you, I was just having fun with somebody. A couple of years back, this digital transformation was big. We suddenly started seeing a new role called CDO, right? Chief Digital Officer. I was joking with somebody that we'll see a new role called CIA, right? Chief AI Officer, right? Every company there will be a CIA sitting there.
Right now, they just throw it at the CISO and hope he can survive because they throw everything at the CISO.
That's right. For sure, I find more integrated in sales and marketing now too. I think more and more companies are now using it a bit more for like product forecasting and things like that. I feel like it's about to blow up in the finance space where we're going to be able to do journal entries and be able to sign off on things and process invoices. And people think how they're going to be. Sometimes they can do it better than the person you hire.
I believe that finance or finance is better set for AI because they have been very highly regulated. So their data has been audited and in better shape than a lot of other companies. Yeah. What I have seen is that they are in a better position to really harness. And that is going to be a differentiator of having rolled out AI successfully, having those digital workforce into your mix, number one. Second thing I'd say to your point, there is something that AI can do, but there is a lot of things that human can do. The tasks that are common, rudimentary, we used to do RPA, right? Robotic programming automation. It has gone to a level of agentic AI where those tasks can be automated. But a lot of the human intelligence is required. The use cases where you have AI plus HI, AI can be your assistant. It can be a digital assistant who can do a lot of things. That is how, because we are deploying or doing a lot of POCs to our customers, that is how I'm seeing the AI space is really evolving. But you guys are in a better shape for sure.
That's great. Anytime you partner with technology and learn how to leverage it early is great. I've got a number of friends who actually work in more tech companies in AI. Look, you still using Excel and all these kind of different things. It's good for me to hear them talk and get ahead of what's coming, what they're selling to maybe different companies, but will be coming to my company at some time.
Let me pivot and ask a tangential question on that. I'd love for you to elaborate how an early stage career professional, especially adding in what AI can do for them, how can they shift their mindset from prioritizing titles and money versus prioritizing learning and experience? How did that play out in your life? How would you advise people, especially with AI in your lens?
No, that's great. There certainly wasn't AI when I started, but there was kind of technology coming. It's very challenging because when you do start out, your title does impact your money and it does impact your resume. And there is certain things you want to do as you develop your career. I felt perhaps even in my life, I got a little too focused on that in my early days. So I'm this title and I should be this title, or I'm making X amount and I really could be making X plus 7 or X plus 10 or $1,000 if I moved here and here. And I had some good mentors come alongside me early in my career, which I don't know that I totally internalized it yet, but we're saying focus on your experience, focus on like your ability to lead. Focus on your ability to understand new technologies and new softwares. And I'm sure if AI was around then, they would have said, that's the type of thing that can transform your career. Focus on experience. Get involved in senior projects, even if you can only help a little bit, even if you can only stretch yourself, the titles and the money will follow. Once you build up that leadership and that skill set and that experience, that's really what drives long-term the depth of your career. I remember taking the advice and now I've really internalized it and I've given it to others. Early on, I was like, oh, yes, but I still want that title. I still want that money. I was fixated. Or I would kind of, okay, I went and did that X project. Now where's my money? The way home from finishing the project, you want your raise kind of thing. Okay, what did you learn? I was taught to be a bit more strategic about your career. Put yourself in this shoes, put yourself in this industry. Think 5 years ahead. If you learn this and this, can you go to this next place? If I was starting again now, I would absolutely be pairing AI, if it's not already paired, with everything I do in my career. I'm already teaching those that I mentor and report to me and things like that to do the same thing. This could be a massive, powerful tool for you in your career. It's going to reshape business. It's going to reshape the world to a large extent. Figure out where you want to be in this world using this tool versus just reacting to it in a few years. Right? You want to be surfing on top of the wave. You don't want to be crushed by the wave. Get ahead of this and get in charge of this. That experience, that learning is always the most important thing. It's hard to outpace your own development. You can grow and get bigger titles and get bigger pay. At a certain point, if your development's not following, you're going to get caught, but you're going to get stuck and you're going to hit a block. And wow, I wish I learned some of these things instead of just racing to this place.
Or make big mistakes.
You didn't know. Yeah, exactly.
No, but I'll tell you why I say it was very funny. My son is 23. He'll be out of college in next 2 months. He got a couple of offers and I keep talking to him about the same thing. At his age, he says, oh, whoever is going to pay me most money, I'm going to take that off. That's my criteria, right? Yeah. I keep telling him the same thing, right? What matters is experience. He is in a very hardcore AI space, right? He's doing bio. I said, go deeper into it. He has got some of the great offers. I hope he realizes. If I reflect back on myself, I think what you said perfectly matters, right? I always looked at the experience. I used to have a board on my desk which says, what did you learn today? If you don't learn anything today,
Well, that's
you're in
great.
big trouble. I
Not just
used
what
to.
did you accomplish or did you get through your list? Or what did you learn today? That's really great.
Yeah. And I used to live by that. That is what brought me here. More than anything, I still keep learning. I think the primary purpose also talking to future focus CXOs like yourself is to learn. There is no CEO degree. There is no CEO certification, right? To do and know what a CEO is supposed to do.
Clear path to CEO anymore. There's CFOs are jumping in. There's engineers jumping in. It used to be a very prototype, but now it's who can actually help unlock this business and take it to the next level, depending on what that next level
I was
should
just
be.
hearing that
Yeah.
CEOs were flailing out at a higher rate in the last year or two than ever before because of various reasons. Just the fact that so many were just not making it work or not knowing the skills required to navigate the waters that they're dealing with.
That's so interesting because there's probably never been more leadership training and leadership books out there and YouTubes and podcasts. Like there's a lot of resources out there, which is amazing. You try and listen to as much as you can, but there is something that's only part of the puzzle of actually being successful. And the CEO is a very challenging position because it's everything and nothing. Every email, every single event in the company is technically you. How do you prioritize yourself? It's when you have one function, you're still always prioritizing your time. When you're managing all the functions, it's okay, how do I make this fit together and satisfy the customer? So it is a complex position for sure.
Yeah, one of my mentors, first time when I started the company and all of those things, he told me that as you, I was very excited, oh, I'm going to become a CEO. I experienced that. What happens? He says, once you become a CEO or a CXO in a leadership position, what is visible about you is all your mistakes and all things that you're not doing right. Nobody cares about what you're doing right. Everything gets amplified that what you didn't do right. You become things, you get used to it and treat that as your feedback. Don't get depressed by it because everybody makes mistakes. We are all human. Your mistakes are going to get amplified now.
Public and media sometimes even.
I believe that applies to all leaders. If you look back about our boss, we used to speak the same thing. What is he doing wrong? More than what he's doing right for us. If you reflect back and look at it, it's so
That's right. The political aspect too, your constituencies, and am I going to get voted in again? There's all those same pressures and trying to get things done through all the different processes sometimes and control mechanisms that are in companies, which are good to put in place. Sometimes they get stuck. They can't make progress or make change because there's too many control mechanisms in the company, which were there to protect them. Now it's stifling them from growing. It's understanding that balance too, I think.
I think that gathering all the knowledge from every podcast and book that you can read, but not having an encounter with that knowledge in the real world is just notes on a paper. And if you don't stress the influence requirements, the ability to leverage your soft skills for the benefit of others in your process, you can get a title and it's going to kill you.
Emotionally, it can kill you pretty fast because sometimes you really feel I'm only a problem creator. You really get a feeling.
Oh, yeah. Your resume looks perfect, but then your day-to-day is awesome.
Do you have any other advice that you would give people who are looking to get into a CFO role or other C-suite role?
It's such a changing world. Like when I started way back, a lot of people in business wanted to get into finance. It was a hot area. There was always hiring. That's become a little bit less and less where the technology component has taken up some of the bandwidth for top business students, which I think is great. I would say focus on 1, your passion. 2, I would say focus on what you like to do and what you're good at. 3, focus on kind of what makes sense in the market, where the opportunities are, because you can learn to be passionate and you can learn to be happy in many different roles as long as you're contributing and you're growing and you're learning, right? I know there's certain schools of thought that say only follow your passions. Some say only focus on what, the job markets are going. I think there's a blend. You can figure out what, you're good at doing, who's hiring, what's available, and what the future is going to look like. For me, even if you're going into finance, I think you've got to be at least in some sort of a hybrid position now, learning about the technology aspects. I don't think it's just a small slice of finance anymore. I think it's going to almost maybe engulf it. I know some friends who work in technology companies who aren't in finance backgrounds at all. We almost talk more and more about the same things now. 20 years ago, they were in a different direction. Now they know more about FP&A and the software and the dashboarding than I do. and they're not even from a finance background. They just know that technology. Understanding that and where things are headed is critical.
I like that approach, taking to both be smart around what your skills are, but also be smart about what skills are going to get you moving forward quickly.
Right.
Find your joy within it, even if it's not the thing you have to do X at this industry. I did that. I thought I was going to go into finance, and I ended up in banking. And 18 years later, I find out that I should be in technology. I could have ridden the internet wave with my friends. And I'm like, what was I doing? I was in the wrong.
I'm still wondering if I should.
We both had to cut our hair and get a good job in finance.
Exactly. And our moms are proud. So like that's super valuable in the future. I don't remember any job that I've had. I've worked for many wonderful places and wonderful companies ever being the perfect job. It might have looked perfect when I applied for, but you show up, you arrive, and okay, you're going to be filling in here and you're going to be doing that. It's never quite exactly what there's always vacancies and stretching and things happening that are out of your control. It's learning to be productive within those spheres. Again, you want to be in the right field. You want to have a kind of path and vision for the future where you're always learning, but it's also learning to be content within a little bit of the chaos and the growth. If you can master that balance, I think that is probably what's going to lead you most productively in your career.
Great insights. Thank you, Jordan. Any last thoughts?
I think what you guys are doing is really fantastic. You're asking a lot of thoughtful, provoking questions to a lot of different business leaders. There's probably not enough of this. There's lots of people that I know that would benefit from this type of dialogue and discussion and growth that's happening. Taking a pause from the day-to-day and the to-do list, sometimes in calendars which drive your day and really think about the future. I don't think we do that enough to really think clearly sometimes. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is drop the to-do list and have these types of strategic discussions.
Thank you again. I look forward to talking to you again.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.